Hey all, Hipper here. Today I want to take you through two of my favorite roleplay games, and it is Divinity Original Sin 2 versus the new Diablo 4. And which one is best, at least in my opinion, I'll let you know in this video. First up, we're going to look at the character creation, because this is one area where I really think Diablo 4 is far behind, because there's 5 different character classes you can choose. And really that's it. You know, every character obviously is different, or every class is different, and you get different skills and obviously things that you can do, you know. So a druid is vastly different to a rogue, but the actual characters, I mean, you can choose your gender and you can choose kinda what you look like, not very detailed though, and that's about it. Then you can give your character a name and you can choose hardcore or not, but that's it. And I realize it's not that important. It's not that important in Divinity either, because you usually watch your characters from far away. But at least in Divinity you have more options, and you can actually zoom all the way in to see your characters, right? Compare the 5 classes in Diablo 4 to the, well, almost, you know, unlimited amount of classes that you have in Divinity here. And they are unlimited because, first of all, you can choose like one of 5 different characters, and each character can also be undead. And as opposed to Diablo 4, you are required to set up your character in Divinity 2, right? Just like in a normal old school role-playing game. So you can start focusing from right from the beginning on something that you want to build that character towards. For example, necromancy or summoning or melee, or, you know, ranged combat, whatever. Like, you can start doing that right from the beginning and you know, pick the skills and stuff that'll make you better at that. In Diablo 4 you always start with the same blank slate, and it all comes down to pretty much what equipment you have, right? So that's a bit disappointing to me, and I just think that Divinity has, you know, stuck to the old school formula, and I think that's the right formula to stick through, because I think Diablo 4 is just, in general, it's just too simple, really. Other than your equipment in Diablo 4, it's the abilities that allow you to customize your build. But although there are many options, there aren't really that many options when you think about it. Especially if you want to do one of the better builds. It's actually really disappointing, I think, because it really dumbs down the gameplay of Diablo 4 even more than Diablo 3, which is a bit of an achievement, I think. Compare that to Divinity, where you have to, you know, juggle the same old stuff like strength, intelligence, and all that stuff. And you also have ability points to juggle, and you have to make sure you do it right, otherwise your character will be underpowered. That never happens in Diablo 4, it's just impossible. And I do realize that Diablo 4 is aimed more at the more relaxed segment, right? But I think it's too simple. So just look at the inventory here in Divinity. It's fantastic. It's huge, humongous, and there's so many things that you can pick up along the way, and so many things that you can craft. And crafting is sorely missing from Diablo 4. It's actually, well, there's a few herbs you can pick up, but it's nowhere near what's in Divinity. I love crafting, and you know, in Diablo you can, you know, pick up randomized equipment, but that's about it. It's nowhere near the like the deep customization to get with the crafting, you know, abilities of Divinity, where you can combine pretty much anything in the game, and you might like discover something awesome. And you know, I love that. I think that's a fantastic way of expanding the game. And because there's so few things to find in Diablo, it's not cool or interesting to find hidden containers anymore, because, you know, well, it's probably just going to be a weapon in there, nothing else. It's actually quite disappointing, if you ask me. And also the whole chase for legendary items in Diablo, and you know, the only thing that you can really do is to you know, add in the gems into your equipment. That's it. That's the only way you can really like add a little bit of personality to it. There's of course aspects as well, but it is very limited compared to Divinity. So both games obviously support local multiplayer and also online multiplayer, so that's a good thing. But again, Divinity wins here by far, simply because that you can do anything you want in Divinity, while in Diablo you are limited to doing what the game is about, which is, you know, killing monsters. At least in Divinity you can do so many more things, and one player can be in combat and another player can be, you know, shopping. In the Diablo 4 you can't do that. You have to do roughly the same thing, both players at the same time. So merchants is another area where Divinity 2 just wins out. There's not even any comparison. Like, there's so many things to buy in this game because the game just has a lot more stuff than Diablo does in general. That's just the way it is. So obviously the merchants are going to be far more interesting to visit. And also Divinity has kept the identify, which I think is a huge part of any role-playing game. It's very like interesting to find something and then have it identified, right? But in Diablo 4 that's missing, and the inventory of the merchants is tiny, and they never really have anything cool. And you know, if you want something good, you're going to have to go out and farm it in the world, and it's just a little bit disappointing because I really love to go shopping in role-playing games and, you know, pick up something cool from somewhere, travel across the map, pick up something else, and then you know, craft it into whatever, and then add that into a weapon along with some sort of you know, magic thing, and, you know, build stuff and craft stuff and have fun doing that. And unfortunately I find that completely missing from Diablo 4. It's very pre-baked, and it's just nowhere near as fun. And, you know, that's a real shame because, you know, crafting equipment and, you know, building your character into your exact specifications, that's the whole fun of these role-playing games. And I realize Diablo 4 is an action role-playing game, while Divinity Original Sin 2 is more of a full-blooded, you know, role-playing game where you really have to make decisions and think ahead and plan your moves. Diablo 4 is way more mainstream, and I get it. Also a lot more people playing Diablo 4 because it's probably, well, not probably, it's a lot easier to get into. But it's nowhere near as deep as Divinity, and Divinity is just, well, so much better. Lastly, let's look at the combat here, because this is obviously an area where the two games differ immensely. Because Divinity is turn-based combat, right, where you take your turn, and if you have more than one player, then it's their turn, and then it's the enemy's turn. So every battle is about like creating a strategy and sticking to that strategy, and, you know, using the elements to your advantage, and, you know, setting up very elaborate traps and stuff like that. Compare that to Diablo 4, where really, let's be honest here, all you do is just walk and hold the A or the X button depending on which console you're on. That's it. And once in a while, you know, you kick off one of your special attacks, and after you've done that, you charge it up by holding the A or the X button again. And especially early on in the game, it's really boring, and it never really gets anywhere close to something I would call deep. This does change once you get up into the high levels and you start paragoning your character and stuff like that. And it's probably an area where Diablo 4 actually outshines Divinity, because the end game of Diablo 4 is obviously much better than Divinity, because Divinity, once you beat the game, well, you finished, you know, the game is over. While in Diablo, you can, you know, theoretically keep playing forever. And that's probably the one area where Diablo 4 totally smashes Divinity out of the park. But roughly, the games are about the same length until you reach that point, and to be honest here, I get a little bit saturated of Diablo 4. Once I get to level 50, 60, whatever, then it just gets too samey, and I lose interest. That doesn't happen in Divinity though, because you can just start over and build a completely different character, while in Diablo you are more limited, unfortunately. Doesn't matter how you know, crazy you are with your builds, there are a lot of limits. So that was my thoughts on Diablo 4 versus Divinity Original Sin 2, and of course when Baldur's Gate 3 comes out, I think that game is going to absolutely flush Diablo 4 down the toilet. But anyway, hope you enjoyed it, and let me know what you think.